I think the biggest mindset shift and lifestyle shift was making sure I had my why, and like quite literally why I wanted to be debt free, like why we wanted to be debt free. I don't think was truly clear. We have this idea that the way we manage our money should be perfect, and reality says otherwise. Like, money is very imperfect. While I don't agree with the simplification of that, I think there's some merit in terms of just being aware of like how tiny things add up. I think the most common one I've felt personally through like friends, family, and our audience is that investing is risky. And I think like that's like the biggest myth, I feel. And I think it's the most important because it really is a barrier for people. And I think there are definitely types of investing and ways of investing that are risky. But for the majority of the population, for me, it feels riskier not to learn about investing. If you're someone that has downloaded our budget template, for example, we've done like a new iteration each year because we keep learning how people want to budget.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode here on Momentum Finance channel. My name is Mo, and I'm super honored and excited to be welcoming another wonderful guest, Siobhan. Welcome to the show, Siobhan.
Hey, Mo. Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's super wonderful to have you here. Why don't we get started by having you introduce yourself a little bit better to our audience, and we'll get going from there.
Cool. So my name's Siobhan, and I'm one half of Hiver right now, along with my co-founder and who also happens to be one of my best friends, Amanda. We built Hiver Academy almost 5 years ago now, and back in 2018, we had just graduated from our MBA. We were both coming from a science background, but wanted some better opportunities and pursued the MBA to kind of broaden our horizon. And we were both able to secure great jobs. We were excited, and we were working really hard at that time to sort of build our career or start our career. But in the background, I think like many other people graduating, we were struggling to pay off our debt. We were, wondering why it was that we were continuing to live paycheck to paycheck despite making a decent salary, getting promoted at work. And I think it felt really embarrassing to us. Like, we felt like we just graduated from this program. Like, why do we feel this way? Why are we living this way? And I think that comes with a lot of judgment. And we were frustrated, but we were also curious, like, why is this happening to us? And from there, I think we discovered that despite our preconceived ideas about money management and budgeting, I think the budgeting piece we finally realized was our golden ticket out of this debt cycle. So that was our first wake-up call. And from that experience, we agreed to be each other's accountability buddies, I guess you can say. And we both created we were brand new to the idea of budgeting, but we created a really simple budget to use. I love building spreadsheets, so I created a spreadsheet for us. And Amanda is visual, so she would draw these, thermometer style trackers all over her wall and track her debt payoff. And we started paying off debt little by little. And throughout this process, I think it was Amanda who started reading Beat the Bank by Larry Bates, which I wouldn't say is like the number one book out there for investing, but we just happened to come across it. And she was like, you have to read this book. Like, I'm mind blown. And I think that's where the light switch really went off. It was the first time that I kind of grasped this idea of investing in something for your future and the why and the how behind it. And I think, at that point, investing seemed to be for everybody else, like this thing that kind of existed, but we didn't know how to get there. And then after reading this book, we were like, oh no, this should be for everybody. We just have to learn how to do it. And so we set up a group chat with another friend who we heard that her dad had taught her. And we were like, okay, we got to learn everything we can from her. And so we set up this small community that created a really safe, open, honest space to learn and ask questions and not feel stupid or not feel judged. And then within 2 weeks of reading this book and setting up this chat, Amanda and I had already started investing. And I think building that community and seeing how easy it was to take action once you had a really solid foundation of support just kind of sparked that inspiration take what we just built and just expand it or try and expand it online in hopes to help anyone else in a similar situation. So that's sort of our background and how we started Hiver Academy.
That's so fascinating. Since then, I think Shaban, you and Amanda have come so far. You've touched on thousands of people's lives through the contents that you share. Through, I believe, aside from the contents, you do also stay in touch with some of those people who reach out to you and provide them more of a tailored support. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. We definitely have, like, obviously, we try our best to connect with our audience at different levels and provide more education over and above, what we provide online. So we've been able to do that. And luckily, they want it from us. So otherwise, we wouldn't be able to provide it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so good. And at the time when you started Hiver Academy, were you ever anticipating that it's going to grow into what it is today?
I want to say, like, in the back of our minds, probably yes. I think we're both like competitive with ourselves. And I think our number one goal was just like, we were like, oh my gosh, we have to share this with all of our friends and family who we know aren't doing this right now. And that was our number one goal. And I think at the back of our minds, we're like, maybe we have something here. Like, we don't know how big it could get or how small it could get, but we have something and we just need to follow the trail and just see what happens. So not directly, but I think once it started to pick up, we were like, okay, I think we can take it a bit more seriously now. It's not just like trying to help out our friends and family who follow us.
That's so fascinating. I want to go back to that debt repayment because a lot of
Hmm.
times that can be challenging. What essentially lifestyle changes or big money decisions had you or Amanda had to make in order for it to become a reality?
I feel like I have an odd answer for this because I'll first give you like my emotional answer and then I'll give you my practical answer
Okay.
of the actions I did. I think the biggest mindset shift and lifestyle shift was making sure I had my why and like quite literally why I wanted to be debt free, like why we wanted to be debt free. I don't think was truly clear. And it sounds silly, but the ability to just be debt free or the idea of being debt free, it wasn't enough of a motivator for me because at that point I had been living off loans since I was 18. Like I paid my way through school. I had always been living off some sort of line of credit and then paying it back and then credit and then paying it. Like that was just my way of life. So the idea of being debt free also seemed like I don't even know what that really looks like. And I don't think I had a strong enough why. So Amanda and I sat down on her own, and I think I finally came up with what my why was, and it started off like after reading that book, I want to learn how to invest. And in order for me to learn how to invest and actually do it, I need extra income.
Right.
And so once I had that goal, I kind of backtracked and said, okay, if I want to start investing, what do I need to do now? Well, I probably need to have a good budget that I actually stick to so that I can free up funds and direct that money into saving for an emergency fund, which I had never had up until that point. And then once I hit that milestone, we both hit that milestone, we were like, okay, we have the extra income over and above that. Now it's time to invest. And I think that was my first why. And then my second was this idea of being financially free. And for me, that doesn't necessarily mean like retire early or not work at all because I love to work on things, but truly for me, it meant the freedom to choose, like the
Hmm.
freedom to choose what I do for work, when I do it, who I do it with, and how I live my life. That was like my biggest why. And I think the lifestyle shifts, like at the beginning, I will say like I had the all or nothing mindset. I was like, I am going to have the most detailed budget anyone has ever seen. And I built like a crazy spreadsheet and that doesn't work for everyone and I would never say it works for everyone, but it at least helped me in the beginning prove that I could do hard things and I can make real change in a small amount of time. And over the course of like a few months, I loosened up the reins and I was like, okay, I don't need to budget down to the dollar. It's more just asking myself, like, how am I spending my money? Where do I want it to go? And what are my values? And that felt like a very achievable way to budget at that point.
It is definitely tough if you think about it, like, wanting to pay off a massive amount of debt, and you really have to
Mhm.
be intentional about it, which is why I loved your answer around trying to think about what is your the why, because if it's not in a motivating enough of a motivating why, you may halfway through the journey you might kind of decide, oh, maybe it's good enough, or yeah,
Mhm.
but it's hard, like there's so many other things.
It's so hard, and that wasn't like, that wasn't our first time trying to pay off debt. Like, we had tried, at that point, we were, like, I don't know, 26 or something, and I graduated my first degree when I was 20, 21. So I tried for years, and it never really stuck, and I think I was just lost. Like, I was lost, and every time I, tried to research debt payoff, I would get, like, it would say, "Download this snowball or avalanche spreadsheet," and
Yeah.
I'd see, like, a billion numbers and, like, "Oh, blah, blah, blah. I can't do
Yeah.
that." Like, no. Well, maybe we'll try next year. So, yeah, yeah.
How much of a role do you think, and having an accountability partner, in your case, having your friend Amanda, played in both of you being successful in that journey of debt
Oh,
repayment?
that's such a great question. I honestly think it's the reason why I'm able to sit here with you today. We have this idea that the way we manage our money should be perfect, and reality says otherwise. Like, money is very imperfect. It's very personal, and I think we both felt like we judged ourselves so hard. We also judged other people. Like, when we, would see other friends say, like, they're broke and they can't do this and they can't do that, or they can't go out to dinner. We're like, why can't you, like, manage your money properly? And when that saying, like, when you start to judge someone else, it really just means you have to look at yourself and
Mm,
figure out what you need to fix
yeah.
in you. And I think having that space, like, the sort of, like, meeting someone eye to eye and agreeing that, okay, we both don't know what's going on here. Let's try and figure it out. And we just became this, like, knowledge sharing learning hub. And I think the beauty of accountability buddies is, like, normally you find someone who's sort of at your level, and if you're lucky, maybe you'll find someone who's just, like, a level above you, or someone that can just pique your curiosity and tell you what you don't know, because what you don't know, you don't know. Like, I don't know when I was first starting, like, I didn't even know what to Google. Like, yeah, how to invest, or, like, how to start investing, but that's just, like, you open a can of worms and you're like, "Oh my, I don't know where to start." So I think it was everything. It was everything, and we always say, like, if you're completely overwhelmed with saving, investing, debt, like, whatever it is, find a community, and whether that community is, like, someone you personally know, or, like, the investing community that you're part of
Awesome.
and I'm part
Yeah.
of, that's enough to change someone's life, I think. Like, aside from all the stuff you have to learn after that, it's like the idea that you have someone in your court and you're a teammate with them and you're both learning and you're both growing just makes you motivated instead of just doing it in isolation.
What was the hardest line item in your cost that you had to cut at the time?
I don't know if it was the line item that was hard to cut, or it was the wake up call that I was spending my money in a way that I realized did not align with me. Like, I didn't realize how often I was buying little things. Like, it's so sneaky. It's like the thousand paper cuts
Mm,
scenario of, like, that. It sounds silly because I think as, like, millennials online, we're always being shunned for, like, buying avocado toast is, like, making you poor or whatever. And while I don't agree with the simplification of that, I think there's some merit in terms of just being aware of, like, how tiny things add up. Because when I looked at my budget, there wasn't one category that was, like, crazy. It was like, I go to cafes a lot. That's a problem. I have said yes to a lot of dinners out with my friends. Like, I was living in the city at that time. I didn't really have a grocery budget that I was using, and I had some sneaky, like, subscriptions that I was continuing to pay for. So for me, it was like I had to be really analytical and figure out that, like, it wasn't just one thing that I was going crazy on. It was like my lifestyle was not accurate in terms of how much I was being paid. Like, I was living above my means in a way that I don't think was huge, but there was just so much room for opportunity that I had no idea, because I was making, like, all of these, it's just like tap, 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 tap. And then you're like, "Oh, I have no money left at the end of the month. Why is that?" That's crazy. Like, to me, I was like, how do I not have money at the end of the month?
yeah.
And then I look through my credit card statements and I'm just like, oh, that's where the shame and,
Yeah.
like, the guilt spiral comes in. So, and I think that's the case for most people. Like, when I've worked with budget clients, I'm like, oh, you don't even know how much opportunity you have. You're not in that big of a, crisis or a situation. Like, you have so much opportunity. And that's what I think we want to help people realize.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of times, sometimes I feel like that might be the reason why we don't, may in the first place, we may not feel as comfortable enough to go back
Mhm.
and look at maybe our financial credit card statement and whatnot, because there comes sometimes that level of, well, okay, well, did I actually take out food like this many times in a month? That feels like a little bit more than what I thought I typically go for, or something that I'm comfortable with. But
Yeah.
obviously, with Hiver Academy, Shaban, like there's that element of trust that is so important, because your clients, your folks that reach out to you, whether they use it as a self-service tool, like for example a budget maybe tracker, or if they're comfortable enough to share some of those numbers with you to get your inputs, how do you build that level of trust in the first place with those clients?
That's such a good question. Obviously, I think trust is built over time, and I think in order to build trust, you need credibility. And I think through our community and our platform, the way that we built credibility was one, being realistic with our audience about what our story was. Like we were not and continue to be we're not experts in investing and stock picking and that's a profession. We're not professionals. We are just regular people that are trying to figure out how to live better through money. And I think that when we started to tell that story a bit more, it resonated with our audience in a way that felt hopefully authentic to them, that we're kind of in the same boat. And, we didn't come from situations where we had a lot of successful people in our lives or, our parents didn't necessarily have the time or capacity or knowledge to teach us. And I feel like that's the majority of people.
Hmm.
And I think when you can find someone that you resonate with a bit, that starts to build your confidence in yourself and them and
Yes.
form this connection. So I think our goal was never to impress people. Like, and I think there's a time, a place, and a space for that. Like, there are people like you and other people that we follow online who are like, oh my gosh, they're a wealth of knowledge on these topics that we need to learn about. And I think when we first started, we were like, we are not here to impress you. We are not here to use, you know, fancy financial terms. We're just here to give it to you straight and explain it in a way that just makes sense, like in total layman's terms. And I honestly think that's the way that we've been able to build that trust with our audience is like we consistently create a simple version of all of these complex concepts. Because I mean, I think Amanda and I both believe that half the time when we were researching, we were like, why did they explain it like that? Like that's difficult to understand. Like there is at least three other levels that could have been broken down through that concept. How do we become that, middle ground to help people understand these concepts? Like, for example, the idea of compounding interest, like when you it now that I think we're like years into it, reading a definition is like no problem. But when we were first starting, we were like, what does this even mean? What are you trying to tell me? Even like a graph, like the graph is going up, like invest and take advantage. It's like, what does that mean? What's the why? How do you do it? Like there's just so much involved. So I think just keeping it simple and keeping it like honest and open and judgment free is the way that we've been able to build trust with our community.
That's so powerful. And you're 100% right, Shaban. Part of that trust is over time you are authentic and the audience resonates with the content that you provide. That's really super crucial. And you're also sticking to true to your who you are. You're not trying to impress others, to your point, or be somebody else that you're actually not. So you're true to yourself. Even I think your starts was on TikTok. Was that right, Shaban? And then expanded to Instagram, or no? What was the first?
We actually started on Instagram
Oh, did you?
back in the
Okay.
day, and then I was like, "Okay, there's this thing called TikTok, and I feel like we need to be on there because it seems like people are growing really fast." And then it was around Christmas time, and I was like, "Amanda, just let me run with it. Let's just use it as an experiment." And then I think, yeah, within like the year, we went from 0 to like 50 or 60K at that
Amazing.
time. And I think obviously TikTok is great for reach. And then on Instagram, that's where we really try and build more personal relationships with our audience.
That's so cool. Yeah, I haven't had much success with TikTok, so I was like, yeah,
That's the thing though, like people are like, okay, obviously there's people with way more followers, but like, how did you do it? I'm like, I feel like it's a lot of luck. The algorithm, like I still don't understand
that's
what we
amazing.
were doing right and what we were doing wrong. So Yeah.
That's so cool. That's awesome. And I think it's so smart as well, being on multiple platforms, because sometimes different platforms attract different types of audience. Like you
Mhm.
may not have, I mean, there might be cases whereby folks might be on multiple platforms, but these days with like our time is so limited, and you might prefer, for example, to be mostly using your time, spending time on TikTok versus somebody is more of an Instagram or somebody. So it's good. Are
Yeah.
those the two platforms that you are mainly more active on, and Blossom too, I believe, Shaban?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Those are like our two main social platforms, and then I use Blossom personally. But it's yeah, that's one platform we want to explore, I think, in building out more of a community. We've just been really focused on our Instagram right now, I think.
That's awesome. Well, I know how we got to know you was through our mutual friend Adrian, who I had on the
Mhm.
show, and he was kind enough to introduce me to you, and that way I got to check out your Instagram. I don't have TikTok, so and these days
Okay.
TikTok apparently doesn't let you even open the links up without
No.
being a member, or at least
Mm.
either that's the case or I don't know how to do it. So mostly I checked your content on Instagram. I was really fascinated. I know one of the questions before we hit the record, I asked you, like, when I first saw your Instagram page, I thought, well, is it Hiver Academy? This must be some French folks talking about it. And then when I watched one of your reels, you were mentioning is Hiver Academy. So for those, since we didn't record at that portion, tell us more. What was the origin of the name Hiver Academy? How did you come up with it? What was the motivation behind it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously in a French-speaking country, we know it's winter. Like, it
Mhm.
means winter.
Yeah.
We wanted when we tried to come up with the name, we wanted it to feel empowering but original, and we actually liked the name Hustle, but it felt very, like, overdone, I guess, or maybe oversaturated, and it gave this sense of, like, urgency that I don't think we liked, and I don't think is helpful for, like, majority of beginners to feel, like, rushed. Like, Hustle Academy is what we were gonna name it, something like that. And so instead, we're like, "Okay, well, we like H. That's interesting." So we went through the alphabet, used a word generator, and Hiver came up, and we both thought, "Huh, that's interesting, and we like it," and we thought it was a bit funny that it also meant not funny, but it was nice that it meant winter in French, and it was yeah, it's kind of a random but simple story. There's really no deep thought in that. No, like, creative story, and then I think because we had both just graduated from school
Mhm.
and coming away with all this knowledge and being in this, like, learning phase of our lives, we wanted to ground ourselves in the idea and the concept of learning, and I think that's why we decided to add academy after it. It just felt really aligned that, like, someone who, you know, when you're looking at Hiver Academy, you don't know what you're gonna learn, but you think you're gonna learn something.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. I
yeah,
love that.
that's what we went for.
Super smart in terms of the naming and branding of it, because with that there's at least that connotation, understanding that, oh yeah, you're gonna go there to learn something, and once you are already hooked with the first content, like, yeah, I like this, and this is a place to learn, I'm gonna
Yeah,
continue to follow. Super smart.
yeah.
Yeah. Was marketing one of the aspects that you are more following, or is it Amanda, or both of you? Do you divide roles in different ways, essentially, in how you run this business?
Yeah, I think naturally we did. At the beginning, I think it was very like we were on everything together. But I come from a marketing and e-commerce background. Amanda comes from a tech background, but also has led a marketing team. So, and she's also a CEO for a startup that she founded, which works very well in my favor because she has an incredible, like, truly CEO mindset. And thank goodness Amanda is who she is, because she is the most detail oriented, pragmatic, technical, research focused leader, like a true leader. And I am almost none of those things. So when we were trying to teach, for example, something complex, like a
Yeah.
complex financial term or idea, Amanda has this gift of visually designing her content in a way that really makes sense that that's not how my brain works. And she can put together a graph and a table like no other and really break down the concepts. And I, on the other hand, come from now a marketing and education background and sort of prefer speaking about the why behind concepts. I like connecting emotionally with our content and our audience to try and bring it to life in different ways. And I think what I love to do is help people build, you know, their money ecosystem, like the systems in their life to help make money easier is where I love to dabble in. And I like just to create the hands-on, really practical key takeaways. So I think together we strike a really good balance. And this was intentional though, because at some point, like 2 years in, we were like, okay, we can't be working on the same things. We need to, like, figure out our zone of genius. And Amanda had read this book, and it kind of took you through how to find your zone of genius and how to actually delegate the work, like between co-founders. So that's what we did. We spent like a few hours one day and just said, like, what do you like to do in this business and what do you not like to do? And we found that like we were
That's
very
amazing.
matched. I wanted to do all the things she didn't want to do. So we're like, oh, perfect. So let's just divide and conquer. And that's how it worked out.
It's so great that you have been so intentional about it. I recall listening to this podcast. I will teach. No, the podcast is How I Built This. Sorry, with Guy Ross.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you must have heard
Such a
some.
good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's this one episode that one of these CEOs, and she talks about how she goes through journey, what are some of the learnings that she's had, and some of her challenges. But one of the key takeaways for her was that when you're deciding who you want to have as your business partner in your business, it's so crucial. It's almost like marriage to some extent, right? You want to be very intentional about it, because at the end of the day, either if that works out, you're gonna be stuck with that relationship for a while, and if not, it's just gonna be also very challenging, right? You want to break that relationship. Now you have to go find another partner. So it's super inspiring how you were so intentional about it early on. You decided how do you match and how do you complement each other in that business
Thanks.
partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like everything we learned is from other people and podcasts and books and stuff, because otherwise we'd just be lost and spinning. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Like applying those learnings. What is one money myth you think, Siobhan, in encountering with so many different people that reach out, or folks that you try to reach out to your contents? What is one money myth that you think is mostly overlooked? Something that sounds very maybe huge in people's minds, but in reality, it shouldn't be a big deal or something that they need to be aware of.
It's funny you asked that, because we used to do a myth series where
Okay.
like every Monday or something we do like Myth Monday back in
Yeah.
the day and try and change people's ideas.
Mindset.
I think the most common one I've felt personally through like friends, family, and our audience is that investing is risky. And I think like that's like the biggest myth, I feel. And I think it's the most important because it really is a barrier for people. And I think there are definitely types of investing and ways of investing that are risky. But for the majority of the population, for me, it feels riskier not to learn about
Agreed.
investing. And, I think on top of that, it's the idea that you have to wait till you have like X amount of dollars to start investing. I think there are some important milestones before you start, like emergency fund and the basics of budgeting and saving. But I truly believe most people could have started way earlier, like myself, with just a little encouragement and some sort of grounding in the idea that like investing is a tool. It's part of your money ecosystem, and it's just something we should be doing just like you pay your bills. Like it's no more scary. Debt is way scarier, in my opinion, like than investing, and like it's way riskier. So yeah, I think the idea that investing is risky. And I think in terms of investing, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I just
Yeah.
think it's this misconception that it's this thing that you're gambling and you're losing all your money, and it's like it's a tool. There are risks associated with everything, but it doesn't seem to be at the level of risk that people really think it is at.
Part
And I think
part of
that's
it as well.
just yeah.
Siobhan, it could be also as well how folks, especially those who have not been exposed enough through the education system, or maybe as they're raised in their parents, maybe the money is not sometimes
Mhm.
the topic that being discussed. That fear mindset might be in their mind. A lot of times as well, there is that notion of fear as well as like maybe anxiety, or essentially anxiety or worry around what if like I make the wrong decision? What if I'm not capable enough to manage my money properly, and it results in all of those negative thoughts that comes to mind?
Mm.
How do you go about empowering your audience, especially those who are feeling those feelings of anxiety and worry about money, to becoming to a level that they are confident? Because I think that's even one of your taglines and goals, right? You want to make
Mhm.
help people become confident about financially and about their money.
That's such a great question. I still struggle with this. I will be honest with you. Like growing up, I think I've been working since I was like 12, like making money since I was like 11, 12. And I I absolutely developed a scarcity mindset, the feeling of never having enough, even when you have money coming in. And what I've learned over the last few years from myself and our audience is that the guilt, the anxiety, the shame, these are all such different experiences. And I'll use myself as an example. Like, I felt shame for not knowing what I didn't know, and then comparing myself to other people and tying my, self-worth to my net worth. And I think when you're someone coming from, debt, that is so strong to get out of. Like, the feeling of debt it's just this weight that carries so much shame. And then I had anxiety when, I wasn't sure. I knew I needed to change. I knew I needed to start, but I just didn't know where. And you're kind of spinning your wheels. And I think that makes people feel anxious. And then the guilt piece is like the guilt, I think, came in at the end of that, in terms of, I know what to do now and I'm not doing it. I feel guilty for not doing what I know I should be doing. So I think for us, and what we've learned, is confidence comes through action. So the sooner we can get people to take really tiny, small steps in the right direction, the sooner they'll realize that they can do hard things. Like, they'll prove to themselves that they can get themselves out. And I think taking consistent small steps toward learning, maybe not even taking action at the beginning, just learning. And I think that's why we try to really break down concepts into digestible, like bite-sized information. Because if anything, if you like see us once a week and you're not really like following us, and you learn like one tiny thing, it's still part of your life now, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Even
you
that
can't
small
take that
learning.
knowledge away. Yeah, you can't take it away. And we know this stuff can be so overwhelming at first. We were so overwhelmed and like carried so much shame and guilt and everything. And like you said, most of us don't grow up with, financial mentors,
Yeah.
or successful people teaching us. So how could we assume that we'll just understand this? Like, no wonder we all feel overwhelmed and shameful and anxious and guilty. Like, but I think the moment you realize that there are a lot of gaps in our system, in our education systems, in society, I think that takes a bit of weight off our shoulders, of like, it's not all on you. Okay, there are some serious issues
Yeah.
with how we learn about money. But yeah, I think the confidence just comes from like that first tiny step. And I just want to go back to something you said previously about like checking your credit card statements. That was
Yeah.
one of the first things Amanda and I did. Like, before we even set up a budget, we both, like, I think we FaceTimed each other and both had our mobile banking up, and we went through our credit card statements and wrote out every single thing. Like, I'd say that was the most painful yet empowering experience ever. And then we highlighted like what was necessary and what wasn't.
Hmm.
And we were just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
that's crazy. So,
Was it
and
like
that, but
needs
that
versus wants type of mentality as well? So you assessed it from that lens of was a need, what was a want?
Yeah. I mean, I probably didn't even do that great of a job, because back then I don't think I really even understood like a need versus a want.
Emotions, yeah.
I
And
was
it's
like,
hard
oh,
too. Like,
but
yeah, I think
I
it's a
need
need,
it.
but in reality.
Yeah, it's hard to do that. Like, even with when we work with people on budgets, I'm like, is this truly a need? Like, and I can't always answer that, or, for people. But yeah, I don't even know if we really did it right, but it spoke volumes when we saw how many things we highlighted that we deemed not to be a want. And that one action, like, apart from setting up our chat group to talk about investing, I think that one action was the biggest motivator, because it just felt like we were now in control of the situation, because we were informed. And I think being informed is one of the gateways to building that confidence.
Definitely, yeah, 100%. You, on your channels, you talk about Shaban, like, providing a budget that actually works for people, as opposed to something that is just there. But, it's like, yeah, it would be great to follow, but like, in reality, it's just on paper and people cannot really follow along with it. What makes your budget stand out? Tell us more a little bit about your budgeting.
Oh man, we have done, I don't know, 10 iterations. Like, if you're someone that has downloaded our budget template, for example, we've done like a new iteration each year, because we keep learning how people want to budget. I think I don't think we went wrong, but when we were first starting out, we were like, this is how you should be budgeting. And we just had this idea that we were told how to budget online. And what we've realized is, I think a good budget only works if it fits your real life.
Hmm.
And I don't think most of us have a realistic idea of how we actually live our life until you put it on paper. Because if you haven't, spent years budgeting, how do you really know? Like, how do you know how you
Yeah.
spend? Um, if your budget feels like a punishment, it's not going to last. And when we started budgeting, like I said, we were a bit extreme. We budgeted down to the dollar, built like a beautiful spreadsheet that was so complicated, and it looked great, and I hated it. And I hated feeling restricted. Like, I hated feeling like I built this thing that now has power over me. And I felt like a kid, like a parent telling a kid, like, you can't do that. You can't do this. And if you hate your budget, you're not going to stick to it.
Yeah.
So what made the difference for us was shifting from restriction to awareness, and like building a budget that sort of tried to be formatted and reflected to understand your values and help you ask, like, where do I want my money to go? What's important to me now and in the future? And am I spending according to that plan or those values? And I think, like, with the practical application of using like a spreadsheet, or you write it down in your journal, like, I think anything could work. There's no one right way. Or you use an app. That practical application with the, values-based psychology behind it, I think that's when it really clicked. And so I think anyone can download a budget, anyone can look at a spreadsheet and start like just plugging in numbers. But if you don't have the where am I, wanting to make my money work for me, or am I spending according to my values? If you don't know your values, then you don't really know like how you want to spend your money. So I think the best budget is one that feels supportive and not suffocating. And obviously, there's no shortage of budgeting content online. Everyone is trying to say, that they have the golden ticket. And I can't even say that, because it really just depends on who you are and how you
Right.
live and what your goals are.
It also probably depends on what the audience resonate with. To your point, like I
Mm,
don't like there are many tools such as that out there, but at the end of the day, if the audience resonates with this, and let's say your budget tool, and they find it meaningful, something that they, to your point, they don't find it suffocating, but rather empowering, and something that they
mm,
can actually execute on. Because the problem is, like, sometimes you start something is great, like it reminds me of New Year resolution. Like, I wanna
yeah.
exercise every single day. Like, especially if you're so ambitious, you start the
Mhm.
first day, great. Second day, maybe. And then shortly after, it might really drop off because you didn't sustain it. You didn't actually build on upon it.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it was not a enough of a big of a why for you to really want to pursue that. So I
Hmm.
love that how early on as well, Siobhan, you touched on, even for yourselves, like you thought about that why, because otherwise, how are you going to ensure that you're going to continue with it?
Yeah. And I was that person. I like
Yeah.
downloaded the budgeting apps back in the day, and I'd get like alerts telling me like I overspent on this category, and I'd feel like offended. Like, why are you
I
telling me
did.
this? I don't want to know this. And so I delete the app. And I
Yeah.
think for us, like, we started with this really complicated spreadsheet because that's what everyone else was doing in the space, like in the personal finance space, having all these graphs and all this stuff. And we're like, okay, that's not our audience. That's not what our community needs. We need something that's simple, effective, and just shows them what's going on. And they can feel empowered through that to make their own decisions. Like, that's kind of the path we took.
Do you remember your first investment? Because part of it, I know at the beginning you said, one of the whys for you was, of course, you wanted to be able to have some money to be able to invest, which is exactly makes sense, right? If you want to grow your wealth over time. Do you remember what was your first investment?
I mean, I think my first investment was like, it was a stock before. It was a stock only because I didn't know what ETFs were. And then and it was like a ridiculous stock. I'll be honest. Like, I found like, must have Googled like stocks under $10. That was my limit. I was like, I can't spend any more than that. Like, it feels too scary. And I found this one stock for a meal prepping company, because at the time is when I come from e-commerce CPG space. So I knew that all of these businesses were kind of coming up with these meal prepping plans or whatever. And so I was like, okay, that feels like very low risk, and I'm just going to do it. And then I invested in it and read another book that same week and sold it. And I was like, I shouldn't have done that. I sold it. Yeah, immediately. I was like, no, that was not what I should have done. But because I started small and I just took a chance, and
Yeah.
like the fact that, I did put in a bit of money, and there was nothing wrong with that company or that stock, and it's actually done pretty well, but it didn't fit with my like values at the time or my risk tolerance or my current knowledge. I kind of jumped the gun a bit and then kind of backtracked. And I think that same week I started to understand ETFs, and I ended up investing in one of my first S&P 500 ETFs. I think it was VFE at the time. And I've been investing in that biweekly ever since.
Awesome.
And I learned that, I learned more about that week from like podcasts and books. And it was just like my stepping stone. And it felt more reasonable for me to use ETFs as an investing tool at that time. It felt less scary, less risky. And I felt more confident doing it. So, and they, at that time, they were all like before fractional shares
Right.
started. It's probably a good idea, good thing that fractional shares weren't really a thing on the app I was using back then, because I felt like I probably would have invested in more stocks to start off
Yeah.
with.
Randomly
But
here and there. Yeah.
yeah, but I don't think I felt comfortable doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was glad that I just found some ETFs that were lower cost, so I can just dip my toe in. That's all I wanted. I was so excited. And I think everyone is, like, especially as a beginner, when you make that first investment, you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm an investor now. Like, I did it. I'm doing it. Even though, like, you're just a fish in the ocean. But yeah, it was such an exciting feeling. And I just really wanted to get in it so that, I could just break that barrier and start. And that's where I think both Amanda and I, our learning exponentially grew from that stage, because we just stood taller in being
100%.
able to open our investing accounts. And by the way, we opened our investing accounts and realized we opened the wrong accounts.
Oh, no.
So we both made mistakes all the way through, because we're not perfect and it's not linear. So yeah,
Hey, I must
we
say
learned a
your
lot.
learning curve seems to be super quick and fast, because I know for me, when I started investing, I got stuck in those realm of like stock picking and here, there, penny stock, you name it, for years before I kind of found my way to the index fund, low cost ETF investing. So you were much quicker in
Yeah.
a week or so. Like that's amazing.
Well, I don't know, like, even the way, or you said penny stocks, and that just
Yeah.
reminds me of Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
Like, when I first watched that movie, I was like, oh my gosh, do I need to be like a penny stocks trader? Like, what is this? But yeah, the I think for both Amanda and I, like, we love to learn. So if we can shoot up and just like ingest all of this knowledge, I think we will, and we try and learn fast. And I think we did that for the goal of like being able to learn fast and turn it around, try it ourselves, and then give it back to our audience and community, and be real with like the mistakes that we made and what went
Absolutely.
well.
Now, as MBA graduates, folks that are successful in your own studies, careers, obviously, you just talked about wanting to learn fast and quick. How did you balance that with when it comes to investing and money, not expecting fast results? Because with index investing, there is that level of patience that comes with it. You don't expect to go in index investing typically to wanting to necessarily get rich overnight. How do you
Yeah.
strike that balance?
Oh, you know what? I never. I'm surprised, because I can be an all or nothing person, but I never went into investing with the idea that I wanted to get anything overnight. Like, I don't want that to happen. I like the slow and steady pace. Like, I am not a trader. Like, and both Amanda and I, we love a sustainable strategy. And for us, that meant, like, I want to go back to something you said in the question to make sure I actually answer it, because I can go on a tangent so easily.
No problem.
But I think when we first started, the idea of going fast, we applied more to learning, not necessarily our money, like not necessarily growing our money fast, but like, how fast can we learn about this entire world that we feel like we were shut out in the last decade? And so we didn't focus on the growth of our money. We focused on the growth of our knowledge and learning. Like, I think that's another thing I'll say is we decided, as every new investor does, like, you're checking your portfolio like every day, multiple times a day. I'm like, oh my God, it went down by 1%. Like, do I need to sell? And like, meanwhile, I have like a few $1,000s in it. And I'm like, oh, And then we both had to ground each other and think like, relax, this is a long-term strategy. By the time we even touch this stuff, we'll be in our 50s or 60s or whatever, whenever. So I think that it helped to have each other to ground us, because otherwise you can easily spin out and worry. And, I saw it with my friends. I see it with our community as well. You can see, once they've made that step to open their accounts, if they made their first investment, they start freaking out about the tiny fluctuations. And we were like, we don't even look. And I think we did the beginning and quickly realized that is not going to work for us. That's not how you build a sustainable mindset around investing. And, I look maybe biweekly, maybe monthly, and I have all of my investments on auto invest. So I'm just like, this is a machine. This isn't going to take over my life. I need to adopt that sustainable mindset for long-term growth.
The
And
automation, right?
like, yeah, and like remember my place. Like I don't want to be a professional trader. I'm not like trying to figure out the next best thing. Maybe in the future, I don't know. But right now, that's not what I'm working towards. I'm working towards sustainable growth.
Love that. Thanks for sharing. Um, I know one of the core of Hiver Academy and the work that you and Amanda do is around empowering folks becoming more confident when it comes to financial
Mhm.
decision making, confident around finances. How do you, Shaban, define financially confidence yourself? Like when you think about being financially confident, how do you define that?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think the definition for me has changed, and Amanda, a lot. To be honest, I think back in the day, I thought financial confidence was based on how much money I was saving or investing. And like once I hit a specific number, I had more confidence in myself. And I think that can be part of it for some people. And I think while having a goal is important, it's never achieving the goal that actually builds the confidence. It was the process to get to the goal. And over the past few years, I've had a major career change. I've had health issues and had to stop working and use my emergency fund. I've moved, I got married, like I've lost a job. And I think now I see financial confidence as the ability to navigate through life with building this money toolkit that allows me to take on life's curveballs, because as we know, life is far from being linear. And I think that confidence comes from acknowledging that I'm not perfect with money, but I am consistent in my learning. I'm curious. And I think that consistency over time is just the key to building confidence and proving to yourself that you can do hard things. And that's where it comes from. It's definitely the process. It's never the goal.
Yeah. And learning about that, I think early on is so empowering, because sometimes we get stuck in that mindset of, oh, I'm going to get to this point and I'm going to be happy. I'm going to get to this point and my life is going to change. And you get to that point and it's like, okay, well, nothing else, not much change. Sure, it give you maybe a little bit more. Let's say if you're talking about in the sense of money. So sure, it might give you a little more optionality, but sometimes, as we all know, the lifestyle inflation too comes with it. If you're not really clear about it, because you think, oh, you have more money, so I'm entitled to it. Well, I worked hard. I want to, and
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that. I guess going back to your comments, right? Know your values. If it's part of your value and if like means to your life, you want to really spend money in it because it brings so much joy or happiness or whatever to your life, meaning value to your life, then of course, by all means, be deliberate about it. But don't, I guess part of the budgeting is always around knowing where your money is going and is that aligns with your values. Essentially, I think that's what you were
Oh,
pointing out.
yeah, that you said that so well. And if I can add something that made me think of it when you were explaining that, like I think the biggest barrier for people isn't ability, it's confidence, right? Like we grew up and we hear, be careful, don't take too much risk. And we remind people that investing and managing your money and things like that, it's not about being risky or fearless. It's just about being informed.
Yeah.
You don't have to know everything. You just have to stay curious and start small. So I love your perspective that you shared on that.
Siobhan, what's one thing that you wish Canadians learned at school earlier on that if they did, it would have helped them a lot along their journey in life?
I mean, my first answer that pops into my mind is I obviously wish I learned about investing as a kid. Like I wish I read books like for kids that are about the concept of investing, but for a 5-year-old or for a 10-year-old. That would have been awesome. But I think another thing I wish that us as Canadians learned earlier is that money isn't a reward, it's a tool. It's a resource, and getting paid isn't the end goal. And I think the sooner we realize that, the sooner we get curious and we want to learn how to use that tool to actually build a life that we want. And I think I've done this, and a lot of people treat their paycheck as, validation for just surviving life rather than a resource. And I think that can make money feel really scarce or stressful, almost like you're chasing it and not just directing it. And I think when you have the mindset that money is a tool, it just helps remove the emotional baggage from it, and it changes how you approach budgeting and saving and investing, and you replace that fear with curiosity and start asking, like, how can I use this tool to make my life better, to create more options for myself, and to reduce stress? And I think that's what I wish we learn collectively.
And how powerful that would be, like, early on. I feel like these days, as the society is moving towards a lot more information being available, like
Mhm.
platforms available, great content such as yourselves, the Hiver Academy, I think that hopefully I would say that there's not a shortage of like valuable contents out there. It's just now more so around being intentional and wanting to really spend the time to go and learn. Because it's not like maybe years ago, back even when I was at school, that these were you couldn't probably find. I mean, maybe you could, but if you to your earlier comment, you needed to know what you're looking for in order for you to go. And if it's not talked about, if it's not even discussed, and if you don't hear it much around, you don't
Mhm.
know where to go. That's that topic actually you need to be pursuing and looking after. So that was, I think, some of the challenges. These days it seems like a little bit easier.
Yeah, I feel like if you talk to anyone over like 30, everyone will give you a different answer. Like, I kind of learned this, or no, I have no idea. But like, my mom always says, like, didn't you learn this? Like, I had to take accounting in high school, and we learned how to balance, you know, a P&L or like a cash flow or your balance sheet. And I'm like, no, I didn't take accounting in high school. So how would I have learned
High school, no,
that?
yeah, I remember university, yes, and even if you do learn that, I would say, there's one thing around like theory, like there's so many things I learned at school. Like honestly, I don't know if today I even remember any of those or some of those I ever
Yeah.
used it, but it's just the applicability to life. I think is also important. Like when you talk about
Yeah.
accounting, profit and loss, like I think it's Tony Robbins or somebody, I can't remember who exactly was, but the notion that they say you are managing the business of your life. Oh,
Mhm.
sorry, you're the CEO of the business of your life, which was so like, wow. Like, if you think about it, we learn all about these techniques for running a business. But if you think about your life almost like, you have a limited time, you want to be successful in life. And I know it may sound like very businessy, but at the end of the day, if you think about it as a CEO, the mindset that comes with it, you take things seriously. If to
Mhm.
your earlier example, if somebody says, hey, let's go out for dinner here and there, like, okay, 2 or 3 times, sure. But if it like maybe gets excessive, if you were to run a business, would you be spending money if so and so random businesses approach you for so many different things and just burn money on this marketing? Probably you wouldn't, right? Because you have to like, oh, well, there's the budget that I have only so much money. So if you apply that same mindset, then maybe even you're more intentional about how you spend your own money.
I completely agree. And like my first degree was in kinesiology and psychology, and I really think formal education focuses a lot on theory, obviously, and not on life skills. And perhaps some institutions feel like those skills will be learned elsewhere or other experiences, and that's just not the case. Like, we don't have anywhere else to learn that. I'm hoping that, and I know more schools are, but that they'll take more responsibility in the future to help people learn. I mean, especially in college or university, when you're taking out these huge lump sums of money, like, surely we need to learn how to manage that. If you're allowing me to take out, 20 grand and just letting me use that to my whim, like, I need to be taught how to properly manage the business of my life. And I think it's so ironic that, like, in our MBA, we have to take corporate finance and accounting, and like we are doing all these things for a business, but we don't have the opportunity to apply it back into our own lives. And that makes me laugh a bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it necessarily fits in like an MBA curriculum to do that. I think it should. I think it would be so valuable though, like if schools chose to do that, like over and above just the theory and concept of things. And yeah.
I think that would be so cool. Yeah, that
I
would
think
be
it would.
amazing.
I would have loved that. And you know
Yeah.
what? Even in undergrad, if it was an elective, I might not have signed up for it back then. But if it was required, like Psych 101 is required for everybody. Why isn't Personal Finance 101 required
Yeah.
for everyone? Like just
Yeah.
make people do it. Sometimes you just gotta make it required.
And it's even your earlier comment, like even if like a small portion of it trigger is there for people or something that they can take away, it might pique their interest. It might start their
Yeah.
curiosity, like, oh, okay, well, this is something I'm interested in, this and this, like, and of course, ideally make it fun. And I mean, by that age, a lot of times, university, I wouldn't consider myself I was being the most mature person, even at the undergrad degree, but still, like, probably
Yeah.
you're a little more probably at a mature level than, let's say, when you're just like a young kid. So there's
Yeah.
differences in there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so
Yeah.
true.
Siobhan, if someone who's listening to our conversation today still feels overwhelmed with their finances and like where to begin and whatnot, what is one small step that you think or small action that you think they could take away after this episode and hopefully allowing them to feel a little bit more confident?
You might guess what I'm going to say, but my first instinct would be to give like practical advice and like how to start a budget, yada, yada. But I don't think that's the most important thing. I think you need to find a friend in a similar or slightly better or worse situation than you that has a curiosity to get themselves out of the situation that they're in and agree to be each other's learning buddies. Like set up a group chat with like a few different people. That's exactly how Amanda and I started. Share your questions, share the books that you've heard, share the podcast, share your concerns and your fears, and learn together. Like I truly think that is the best place to start because, you know, obviously you can go at it alone, but it takes you a lot longer and it's much harder and it's not as fun. So yeah, get an accountability buddy and do it together. I think that's my best piece of advice for people.
It's powerful, yet definitely doable, something that folks definitely can follow along. It's been so wonderful having you here today. For those who want to learn more about you or the type of services and contents that you create, where can they find you?
Our handle is Hiver Academy across all platforms. And then we have a great free Money 101 course if you're just starting, and you can access that through our website and download our budget tools or just get in touch with us at hiveracademy.com.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much, Siobhan, for accepting my invite, coming on the show, and sharing your wisdom. I really appreciated that.
Thank you so much. This was awesome, Mo. Appreciate it.